Every country on Earth is in debt. The United States owes 38 trillion. Japan owes 9 trillion. The entire planet owes 315 trillion, 3 times the size of the global economy. But here's the paradox that should terrify you. If everyone owes money, who exactly is owed? The answer isn't what you think. Because when you follow the chain of creditors, when you track who actually holds the debt, you discover something disturbing. The world doesn't owe money to anyone in particular. It owes money to itself. But 4 men, 4 bankers across 3 centuries, designed it that way, deliberately. They built a system where debt can never be repaid, where governments borrow forever, where interest flows eternally upward, and where the people who designed the trap profit from every payment, every crisis, every bailout. This isn't conspiracy. This is documented history. The meetings happened, the contracts exist, the mechanisms are public record. And once you see how they built it, you'll understand why 38 trillion isn't a problem to be solved. It's the system working exactly as designed. Let me show you the 4 architects, the 4 moments when the debt trap was engineered, and why every government on Earth is now caught inside it with no way out. Before 1694, kings borrowed money the old way. They'd go to merchants or nobles, promise repayment with interest, and if they couldn't pay, they'd default. Creditors lost money. Kings borrowed from someone else. It was risky for lenders and embarrassing for kings, but it was contained. Debt was temporary, either repaid or defaulted. The system cleared. William Paterson changed everything. He was a Scottish merchant and financial schemer who tried and failed multiple times to get rich. In 1691, he had an idea that would reshape civilization. England was at war with France. King William III needed money desperately. The treasury was empty. Tax revenue couldn't cover war costs, and traditional lenders were refusing new loans because England had defaulted before. Paterson approached the king with a proposal. He would organise a group of wealthy merchants to lend the government 1.2 million, about 300 million in today's money. A massive sum. But here was the innovation. The loan would never be repaid. Instead, the government would pay interest forever, 8% annually. And to manage this arrangement, Paterson proposed creating a new institution, the Bank of England. The mechanics were revolutionary. The merchant lenders would give their gold to the Bank of England. The bank would lend it to the government. The government would pay interest annually from tax revenue, and the bank would pay that interest to the merchant lenders. But here's the critical detail. The government wouldn't repay the principal, ever. The loan was permanent. Why would merchants accept this? Because the interest payment was guaranteed by Parliament. It was backed by the government's taxing power. As long as England could tax its citizens, the interest would flow. And the banknotes the lenders received in exchange for their gold could be traded. They were as good as money, better than money, because they paid interest. Parliament approved Paterson's scheme in 1694. The Bank of England was chartered. The merchants provided their gold. The government got its war funding. And for the first time in history, national debt became permanent. Not a problem to solve, but a feature of the system. Here's what nobody explains about why this was brilliant for the bankers. The government paid 8% interest annually on 1.2 million. That's 96,000 per year forever. The merchants had essentially bought an annuity from the government. As long as England existed, as long as it could tax, the money flowed. And if they wanted their gold back, they could sell the banknotes to someone else. The debt was transferable, but never repayable. But Paterson's real genius was what came next. The Bank of England was given the right to issue banknotes backed by the government's debt. They could print paper money up to the value of the loan. This created money out of debt. The The government's IOU became currency, and the more the government borrowed, the more money could be created. This was the template. Government borrows, never repays principal, pays interest forever, and the debt itself becomes money. It's brilliant if you're a banker, catastrophic if you're a taxpayer, because you're paying interest on debt that will never disappear. Within 50 years, every major European power copied the model. By 1790, the newly independent United States adopted the same system. Alexander Hamilton explicitly modelled America's financial system on the Bank of England. Permanent debt, interest paid from taxes, bonds traded as currency. Paterson died in 1719, not particularly wealthy, despite creating the Bank of England, but the system he built persists centuries later. The Bank of England still exists. British government debt has never been paid off. It's been refinanced, rolled over, and expanded, but never eliminated. The debt trap was set in 1694, and every government since has walked into it willingly. By the early 1800s, European governments had embraced debt. They borrowed for wars, for infrastructure, for operating expenses. But there was no organised market. Each loan was negotiated individually. Interest rates varied wildly, and only the wealthiest merchants could participate. Nathan Rothschild changed that. He industrialised sovereign debt. The Rothschild family started as money changers and traders in Frankfurt. By 1800, the 5 Rothschild brothers had established banking houses in 5 major European cities: London, Paris, Frankfurt, Vienna, Naples. This network was unprecedented. They could move money across borders faster than anyone else, and they used this to dominate sovereign debt issuance. Nathan Rothschild in London was the strategic genius. During the Napoleonic Wars, Nathan arranged loans for Britain, but his innovation was how he structured them. Instead of lending directly to the government, he bought government bonds at a discount and resold them to investors at a markup. He created a secondary market. The government needed money. Rothschild provided it immediately. Then he sold the bonds to investors. The government got its money fast. Rothschild collected the spread, and investors got a tradable asset. Here's why this matters for the debt trap. Before Rothschild, governments could theoretically refuse to pay. If a king defaulted, his creditors lost money and the system reset. But Rothschild made sovereign debt tradable across borders. Ownership became a web. Defaulting wasn't just refusing one creditor. It risked collapsing an entire international financial network. This was Rothschild's innovation. Make debt so interconnected that default becomes impossible. Not because governments are responsible, but because default would trigger systemic collapse. Governments became trapped. They had to keep paying. And they had to keep borrowing to pay the interest on old debts. The debt trap was no longer just permanent, it was inescapable. By 1900, America was becoming an economic powerhouse, but it still had a primitive financial system. Banks operated independently. The money supply was tied to gold, and there was no central mechanism to manage debt. J.P. Morgan fixed that, not for the public good, but to protect his banking empire. In 1907, there was a financial panic. Stock prices crashed, banks failed, and the economy seized up. J.P. Morgan personally organised a bailout. He gathered the major New York bankers, locked them in his library, and forced them to pledge their own money to stabilise failing banks. It worked. The panic ended. And Morgan became the de facto central banker of America. But he was ageing. He knew he couldn't do it again. So Morgan and his associates designed a permanent solution. They needed a central bank. Americans hated central banks, so Morgan's group disguised it. In 1910, Morgan's associates, including Senator Nelson Aldrich and representatives from the largest banks, held a secret meeting on Jekyll Island, Georgia. For 9 days, they designed the structure of what would become the Federal Reserve System. The plan was brilliant political engineering. It wouldn't be called a central bank. It would be called a Federal Reserve System. It wouldn't be one institution. It would be 12 regional banks. It wouldn't look controlled by Wall Street. It would be overseen by governors appointed by the president. It looked decentralized, democratic, public. But the structure ensured banker control. The regional Federal Reserve banks were owned by member banks. The member banks influenced the regional banks, and the system's most important powers, especially the ability to create money and buy government bonds, would sit at the centre of the financial network. The Federal Reserve Act passed Congress in 1913, and the debt trap expanded. Now the government didn't just borrow from banks, it borrowed into a system where a central bank could create money to buy government bonds. That meant effectively unlimited demand for government debt. Before the Fed, there was a limit to how much the government could borrow. Banks only had so much money. But the Federal Reserve could create money by purchasing government bonds. The government issues a bond, the Fed buys it with newly created money. The government spends the money, and the debt sits on the Fed's balance sheet, backed by nothing but the promise that taxpayers will service it. This is the mechanism that enables debt at scale. The government can roll over debt forever because there is always a buyer, and interest payments flow year after year to whoever holds the bonds. By the 1970s, this debt machine was functioning across the developed world. Governments borrowed, rolled over debt, paid interest, repeated the cycle. But developing nations were different. They borrowed for infrastructure and growth, and many couldn't keep up the payments. The system was reaching a breaking point, until Paul Volcker made the debt trap global and permanent. Volcker was Federal Reserve Chair from 1979 to 1987. Inflation was high. US credibility was eroding. Foreign governments were losing faith in the dollar. Volcker raised interest rates dramatically. This crushed inflation, but it also detonated the finances of developing nations that had borrowed heavily in dollars when rates were low. Suddenly, their interest costs exploded. Countries couldn't pay. In 1982, Mexico announced it couldn't make payments. Default should have followed. Banks should have taken losses. The market should have cleared. But that's not what happened. Instead, the crisis was managed through international rescue lending. The goal wasn't to erase the debt. The goal was to keep interest payments flowing and prevent the banking system from taking catastrophic losses. And those rescue loans came with conditions: austerity, privatization, market liberalization, currency devaluation. Economic policy rewritten as the price of staying solvent. This is the final innovation. When debt becomes unpayable, don't forgive it, restructure it. Lend enough to keep payments going. Make the debt manageable but permanent. Turn debt into leverage. Turn crises into control. And that pattern has repeated for decades. Now step back and look at what these 4 upgrades created. Start with Patterson's model. Government borrows, pays interest forever, never repays principal. Add Rothschild's innovation. Make the debt tradable globally so default becomes systemic. Add Morgan's mechanism. Build a central bank structure that can create money to buy government bonds, enabling scale. Add Volcker's trap. When countries can't pay, restructure and refinance. Don't forgive. Keep the interest flowing. The result is today's world. Hundreds of trillions in global debt. Government, corporate, household. None of it is designed to be paid off the way people imagine. It is rolled, refinanced, and serviced. And because the system is interconnected, default in one place threatens stress everywhere. So who owns the debt? It's not one villain in a dark room. It's institutions, pension funds, insurance companies, banks, central banks, asset managers, retirement accounts, bond funds, and yes, governments owing other parts of themselves through trust funds and internal accounts. And here's the mechanical reality. Interest payments create a continuous flow from taxpayers and borrowers to bondholders and financial intermediaries. It's not always visible because it's not labelled as a tax. It's called debt service, but the money moves all the same. And that's the final truth. To the system, 38 trillion isn't just a crisis, it's also an asset, a revenue stream, collateral, a foundation for more lending, more leverage, more balance sheet structure. Debt isn't an accident in this machine. Debt is the foundation, and interest is the rent charged for living inside it.